Y él es Jamie Herkham. Nuestro invitado es de Epic Games. Jamie ha impulsado iniciativas para acercar herramientas de tiempo real a creadores y estudiantes, promoviendo el uso de Unreal Engine. Hoy nos mostrará cómo esas tecnologías están cambiando de manera de aprender, colaborar y crear. Aprovecho de darle gracias a Unreal Engine y Epic Games por apoyar este espacio. Démosle un fuerte aplauso a Jamie Harcourt.
Go ahead. Yeah. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I have to say as well, this is going to be a presentation done in English. I'm so sorry I do not speak Spanish. But if anyone needs help translating, I know that Carlos has been great so far, and we have assistance in that realm. So let's get started. So today I'm going to be talking about virtual production, the real-time revolution in film, and this is going to be coming from an Unreal Engine and Epic Games perspective. So let's dig in a bit. First, just to introduce myself, I'm Jamie Herkham. I come from the Unreal Engine Education, Learning, and Training team. I've been with Epic for about 4 years now, actually. And interestingly enough, before I dove into real time and animation and virtual production, I was actually a documentary film producer. So my background is in live action filmmaking, and not just live action, but actually nonfiction narrative filmmaking. And the reason why I got into 3D was because I was working as a producer. I worked for Showtime, I worked for Vice and CBC in Canada, and I wanted to do a master's and really like go deeper into documentary narratives and look at it from like a theoretical perspective. So I went and did a master's. I was planning an entire thesis, feature-length documentary, and then COVID happened, unfortunately. And so with that, I couldn't rent cameras, I couldn't travel to go shoot the people who I wanted to shoot, and so I decided, what if I just made this a fully animated documentary? Now, I had no experience in animation prior to that, but I, over the course of 2 years, taught myself the fundamentals of animation, the creation of digital humans, and motion capture to bring this story to life, but virtually. And it was an amazing experiment, and I just fell in love with the workflow. I especially fell in love with digital humans and making digital twins of real human beings. As you can see on the side, this is my metahuman character here that I've constantly iterated on. So at Epic, my focus is really on filmmaking, virtual filmmaking, and also the study of digital humans. I teach at a few different universities in Toronto as well, Humber College and Toronto Metropolitan University. But again, on the Epic Games team, I do education, learning, and training. So if you didn't know, Epic Games has an entire division of the company that is dedicated to learning Unreal Engine and then also helping folks at the high school and post-secondary level adopt our technologies. And of course, Epic Games is such a broad company. We do this in a number of ways, whether it's game development, 3D animation, virtual production filmmaking, simulation, architectural visualization, and so much more. So if any of you are educators here in the room today, I would love to connect with you, just as a side note. But Epic Games is a really interesting company. Like I said before, we touch on so many different technologies, but the simplest way to explain this is that Epic Games has two major divisions. One is publishing and the other is licensing or software. So I always like to start this way because sometimes I say, oh, I'm from Epic Games, and someone asks me, oh, do you work on Fortnite? And I say, no, unfortunately not. Like, I'm not that cool. But obviously, Epic Games, we publish really, really popular IP like Fortnite and Fall Guys. But on our licensing division, this is where we create the software for developers. And these are developers at all levels, whether it's a AAA game studio or whether it's a hobbyist who's just getting into some animation workflows. We want to make sure that all of our tools are accessible to a wide range of people. Speaking of which, we have many tools. in the Epic Games ecosystem. Primarily, people know Unreal Engine. That is what we're going to be talking about today. But just so you know, we have a whole suite of creative tools that are available for free to anyone who's interested in using them. So we have Unreal Engine. We also have UEFN. We also have tools like MetaHuman, which I touched on before. This is our high fidelity digital human software to create just an infinite amount of digital characters. And these aren't just used in games, they're used in animation, they're used in filmmaking. We're going to look at some previs examples with metahumans a bit later, but this is one of our really exciting tools. We also have software like Twinmotion. Has anyone used Twinmotion before? A couple. I really love evangelizing this software because it is so accessible and it's a really beautiful piece of technology to quickly visualize. So originally what's cool about Twinmotion is that it was made for the architectural visualization field, but now we're seeing a lot of adoption of Twinmotion in product design and marketing. We're also seeing a lot of adoption in Twinmotion for art departments to build sets. You have a really beautiful suite of like materials and textures, and it's really, really quickly to iterate. Simulation also in automotive is one of our biggest customers for Twinmotion. This is free software. So if you're not quite at the level yet that you want to dive into Unreal, but you're curious about 3D visualization, I would suggest you get started with Twinmotion. But of course, I would say one of our most popular pieces of software is Unreal Engine. Who here has used Unreal before? Okay, so maybe like half of the audience. Okay, that's great. I'm happy to be amongst friends. If you don't know what Unreal Engine is, I'm going to give you a really simple definition or explanation, okay? So Unreal Engine, we say, is the world's most open and advanced real-time 3D creation tool for photoreal visuals and immersive experiences. It enables game developers and creators across different industries to realize next-gen interactive 3D content with greater freedom, fidelity, and flexibility than ever before. Now, the reason why I use this definition here is because a lot of people think Unreal Engine is just a game engine. That's what they call it. But internally at Epic, we do not refer to Unreal as a game engine. It is the world's most open, advanced, real-time 3D creation tool for high-fidelity visuals and immersive experiences. So to date, Unreal Engine has been used in over 850 film and television products since 2016. Now, this is a huge number. So these are just some of the examples of how Unreal Engine is being used across media and entertainment. A lot of IP here that you probably recognize, a lot of stuff that you engage with. Maybe you didn't know it used Unreal, but the thing here is that we're not saying all of these films have used LED volumes or in-camera visual effects because Unreal Engine is used at different kind of levels of the film production process. So we can see Unreal Engine being used in pre-visualization, purely for 3D animation, or in the context of just visual effects. So to kind of get started here, I want to give a simple overview of virtual production because I know kind of in the audience, some of you are practitioners and have been using VP for a long time, and some of you might be fairly new to the medium. So I want to make sure we get aligned on our terms. So virtual production, we say, is a broad term which is referring to a spectrum of computer-aided production and visualization techniques. Virtual production uses technology to help realize creative ideas with more freedom when making creative choices. Virtual production is the ability to visualize the film from the very beginning. And finally, the only constant in virtual production is change. So this is a very broad and kind of vague definition. I understand that. But what I'm trying to point out here is that, again, internally at Epic and within Unreal Engine, we don't say that virtual production is just in-camera visual effects. That means virtual production isn't just done with LED volumes. It is a broad term. Again, a range of different visualization filmmaking techniques. So what I'm going to show you now is one of our VP demo reels that we created at Unreal Engine that shows you kind of, again, working in this more broader term, the different kinds of projects or the different mediums that we refer to as virtual production. So here's the reel.
Hola. I see you. I see you. Hallelujah. I see you. I see you. Hallelujah. Amen. Hallelujah. I belong in you. I belong in you. I belong in you. I belong in you.
So that reel is actually from a few years ago, but why I love to use it again is that it just shows the breadth of what we consider virtual production, not just LED volume filmmaking. So the primary types of virtual production we say, one is visualization. So this is at the very beginning of the process of, creating a new IP or creating a new film. This could mean 3D pre-visualization, tech viz, stunt viz, or just 3D storyboards with still images rendered in Unreal Engine. Animation, obviously, we call this in-engine storytelling, the use of maybe digital humans or 3D animation. And then finally, in-camera visual effects. So this is where we start getting into the LED wall or volume-based virtual production with camera tracking inside of our volume. So all of this, again, just so you know, is what we refer to as virtual production. So this could look like a fully animated production. This could be a CG and live action hybrid film where a lot of the CG is done in post with green screen, or this could be CG and live action hybrid filmmaking in real time, which is a lot of the examples that you've seen today, that LED volume based workflow. So in-camera visual effects, this is where we get final pixel in camera. So I know that's what a lot of you want to hear about today. Quickly, I just want to give you a brief kind of overview of the history of this technological evolution. So we could start at something like painted backdrops, which you see in the example here from The Wizard of Oz. Moving on to rear screen projection, we have front screen projection that came afterwards. Blue chroma key in the 1970s is where we start getting into these compositing workflows with CG. And the reason why they switched from blue chroma key to green screen is basically because of the fabrics that a lot of the actors are using. The fact that blue appears a lot more in clothing, in outfits than green. So they decided to switch that over to green screen and then with tracking markers as well. So these are the things that came before it. So the reason I like to show this is because a lot of people think that virtual production is like the newest technology in the entire world and it's completely revolutionary. But it's important to acknowledge some of the things that came before it, even something like painted backdrops and the ethos behind what we're trying to do with painted backdrops to immerse actors inside of a world that does not exist in real life. It's not tangible, right? So all these things came before ICVFX. And so finally, along this trajectory, we get to ICVFX. So I have a quick video that we made a few years back that kind of demonstrates the power of ICVFX.
As a director, time is your biggest enemy. And the thing about this, the speed at which we're able to move and the amount of setups, that's honestly the dream. The ability to find new shots on the stage is just incredible. We can really get to the core of what a scene is about and then use the volume to help tell that story.
One of the things that excites us most, of course, about this is that the fact that we can do in-camera choreography where all the elements of the frame are actually in concert with one another and organically working off of one another to create a more visceral experience.
If an actor has an idea or a camera operator wants to reframe the shot, you can make those alterations in the moment, and everyone is working in a very tactile way.
In the same amount of time that it would take me to change a light in the physical world, I'm able to have new lighting on the wall. As a director, that's a game changer.
It's so much easier now to be able to make the changes in real time, see their effects, and then make adjustments from there.
And it's immediate, you know? So your whole world that you're shooting in is changeable.
It allows for a happy accident. It allows for more spontaneity in the creative process.
So with ICVFX, this is basically a slide that's just dissecting all the elements of a professional stage. So again, some of you might already know this, but for those of you who are kind of, I guess, virtual production or ICVFX curious, this is kind of what goes into the process. So of course you need an LED wall. Sometimes that's a volume, which means it's curved, but a wall does just fine as well. You need a camera tracking solution, so you can track the camera's positionality in space and get that parallax effect. You need synchronized hardware, an appropriate camera, control and rendering computers, a performant network, and recording, playback, and capture hardware. So this is a really high-level overview of what some of the things that you might need kind of going into the process. So this is what the professional stage looks like. So kind of breaking this down in terms of the software that's used, this is where Unreal Engine really comes into play. So of course, Unreal Engine, its primary use case right now, I would say, would be to create the content that goes on the volume. So your environment, your backdrops, and your assets that kind of blend between the physical world here and the virtual environment in the background. A lot of that is created with Unreal Engine. So the 3D environment is the backdrop in lieu of post-production green screen compositing. So you can see here, this is one of our sample packs that's available for free on the Fab Marketplace. You also saw it in that video that I just showed right before. They were using this. So just so you know, this entire environment is free on the Fab Marketplace right now. So this is our kind of like demo pack. It's called the ICVFX production test that you can download, and you have that full environment. I just checked yesterday, and it is updated for Unreal Engine all the way up to 5.7, which is our newest release. So originally it was created in 4.27, so you have all the different engine versions there. So this is just kind of trying to show you that, something like this is available to you and used right away. But when it comes to kind of designing the background for ICVFX or doing the world building that goes into it, a lot of people think that in order to get started, they have to be an expert modeler, they have to know how to texture and do materials and all of that. That's not really the case. Like again, if you want to get started and just play around, you can get a pack like this on the Fab Marketplace. Or what a lot of people do when they're first getting started with this as well is do something called like kit bashing. So they're downloading a bunch of different assets that other creators have made, and they're just quickly iterating and building that environment. So what we have is actually called the Fab Marketplace, where you can download assets for free. So I'm going to show you a quick reel of the Fab Marketplace. So again, if you're not an expert modeler and you don't really know how to get started with this world building process, my first suggestion would be to go to the Fab Marketplace and start downloading some assets and kind of building out your world from there. Some of them are free assets and some of them are paid, but there is a lot of great free content on the marketplace as well. The other amazing thing here is that we also have a newly free piece of software called Reality Scan. So this is really entry-level and accessible photogrammetry software where you can actually scan real-world objects and then turn them into 3D assets that you can use inside of your Unreal Engine scene. So there's an example of this here. I'm so happy to announce now that this is free and it works with a wide variety of smartphones. So you could get started with a really simple kind of photogrammetry pipeline right away if that's of interest to you. This is really great for creating bespoke assets, something that you can't find on the marketplace or maybe you can't model, but you really want to put into your scene. I would suggest downloading the Reality Scan app and getting started. Unreal Engine, in addition to world building and asset creation, environmental design, we have a number of VP tools inside of the engine that are used in ICVFX workflow. InDisplay is one that you probably want to look into. So this is a multi-display rendering framework that ensures the seamless real-time playback of Unreal scenes on the volume. Again, look into InDisplay, please, if you're interested in these workflows, learn how to use it. Switchboard is a Python application. It's the central control hub for managing and synchronizing multiple remote devices. Composure is a compositing plugin within UE for layering real and virtual elements. Now, Composure just got a huge update in Unreal Engine 5.7. I'm not sure if you've seen that, but it's a really cool way that if you're just working with a green screen, for instance, and you don't have access to an LED volume, you can still do basically in-camera visual effects with live compositing. It's not compositing in post, it's real-time compositing. So Composure, again, huge update here. If you're not at the LED volume kind of level yet and you're working with green screen, I do suggest you look into that. And then Live Link is kind of the thing that is making everything work together, streaming real-time motion capture and camera tracking data into Unreal. So Live Link is kind of the I want to say central graph. I had a graph of it before and then I deleted it because it was a little too maybe above some people's head, but Live Link is going to be the thing that's connecting all of your tracking and kind of letting it live harmoniously inside of Unreal so you get that nice result on the volume. As for the hardware component of virtual production, this is where we have our LED volumes or wall. So panels that are arranged from wall or a curved volume that display the real-time rendered content. The reason I like to show this slide always is because, oftentimes people say the volume and we refer to it as the volume. Something like the Nant stage here in El Segundo is a volume because it's nice and curved. We have a ceiling panel as well. But again, just to get started or to play around or to make some content with this, you don't necessarily have to go for something like the Nant stage that's going to, be quite costly for rentals. We have a whole, kind of series or different options for working with ICVFX in terms of the volumes that you have. This is the LA Lab R&D stage. It has a slight curve, as you can see, with a ceiling panel and two wild walls that are movable. And then we recently, I think, got rid of this one, but we also had the Latte stage in Culver City, which is a tactical training and EDU stage as well. And you can film content on it. It just depends. You really have to kind of assess your needs in terms of your production to know which volume or wall is best suited. But just so you know, you don't have to necessarily, if you're going into this for the first time or trying to film something, you don't necessarily have to go with the highest option. There's a lot of cool things we can do with ICVFX and even some light tracking as well. We could do it right here on this wall and it would, we'd get pretty cool results. The other component we have to be aware of is motion tracking as well. So when we're shooting in ICVFX, we have to make sure that the LED wall and the content on it is reflective of how our eyes perceive motion, right? So everything has to be moving. We can't just take a camera here and do a pan along this wall with a still rendered background and expect it to look realistic. So what we're trying to achieve here is something called parallax, which is basically how our human eyes perceive motion. My really simple explanation of parallax to people who don't really understand how this works is that imagine you're driving in a car along a highway and you have a fence beside the highway, and then you have some trees, you know, further down the line, and then some mountains, right? When we're driving along, everything is going to be moving at different speeds, right? And that's because that is how our eyes are perceiving the motion. So the fence is going to be going really, really fast. The trees are going to be going like pretty fast, but not as fast as the fence. And the mountains may look like they're barely moving at all. So in order to replicate this kind of illusion, we have to track the camera, and that has to respond to the volume. So motion tracking hardware, these are just some examples here. This is not a full breadth, but we would have something like OptiTrack or Vicon, which is going to be demoed in the next room. And then we would have something attached to the camera that is tracking the camera's position in the space as well. So these are kind of the two main components, and this isn't even going into like body motion capture or facial motion capture. This is just tracking the camera's positionality in space so that the environment on the wall that is rendered in Unreal can respond and move. This is my graph about, again, live link here. So this is kind of how everything is connected together. Again, this is a very simple explanation. There is more that goes into it, but this is really for the people who are just getting into it. We have our physical camera and our tracker. That tracking data is fed into live link. The live link subject is attached to the Cine camera actor, which is the virtual camera inside of Unreal. In-display is syncing the wall content to the rendered output, which is in camera. So this is like the blend of the physical and the virtual as well. So again, that was a very simple graph as a high-level overview, but this is really our VP technology family tree, as we call it. So all the different components that might go into virtual production or an ICVFX workflow. So I would encourage you to take a photo of this and maybe look into some of the different elements, because we don't have time to go over each and every single one. Some of this has to be probably a little bit updated as well, I'm realizing now, for older versions, but that's okay. So in terms of workflow and production, this is one of the kind of benefits of ICVFX that I really like to evangelize, how it's changing process or how it's changing pipeline. So this is a graph that we use often to kind of explain you know, the ICVFX workflow, again, in a really simplified way. What you would realize here is that, you know, our principal photography and our post and VFX and editorial, what you would kind of look at in a traditional film with a lot of CGI and a lot of VFX is really kind of making the post and VFX stage of the process a lot bigger, right? Because what often happens is that people film, the directors are on the set, let's say working in a green screen workflow, and then they hand it off to post, and then it's kind of a black box. We don't really know how long this is going to take. We don't know how many crews or team members this is going to take, and that post-production process is eating up a lot of the time, effort, and also money of a production. So the value you get with ICVFX is that you're taking away some of that time and effort and money from the post process, because you are getting final images in camera during your principal photography. So I have a quick clip of some crew members talking about this pipeline and process.
The really exciting thing about this is the fact that we're not pushing everything to the end anymore. This isn't something that like, oh, we'll just deal with it later. We're making those decisions with our entire team, our production designers, our DPs. Everybody is there on set working on this stuff together.
It's not separated into components of pre-production, shoot, and post-production. Usually you just have your physical set that you're standing on, and this green screen is behind you, and you just kind of give it over after you're done shooting, and you hope that it all works out.
Once principal photography ends, post takes over, and if you're not part of that, everything that you've really envisioned and that you've designed goes through a filter and doesn't always come at the other end in the way in which you envisioned. With this, you have the virtual art department with control of the concept designs all the way through to final pixel.
So what this really, like the value of this is that it is kind of making that pipeline, I would say, more collaborative. Again, it's not just like teams being really segregated and handing it off and having kind of no idea what the final result is going to look like, or maybe the director comes and sees the CGI or VFX at the end and says, no, I don't like any of that, do it again, that's time, that's cost, that's money. Again, everyone's kind of looped into the entire production process, which is really important. So the phases of virtual production, or ICVFX, probably the easiest way I can break this down is into pre-visualization, tech viz, and then a virtual production shoot date. So again, if you're just getting into these kind of workflows, you're curious about using them in the context of a television show or a pilot or a film, I would say these are kind of your phases of production. And this does not include post-production, which we still do for color correcting, all of that, but really up to principal photography. So traditional previs, I would say, in a live action context, really before the adoption of real time, was really relegated to storyboarding, right? Does everyone know what storyboarding is in film? Right, so we have an idea for a film. Let's say I'm making a short and I'm going to plan out my shots, so I'm going to make a storyboard. I'm going to do this with pen and paper, and I'm going to draw out and write in all of the different shots and shot compositions that I want. So this is a medium close-up, then we're going to cut to a wide shot, and I'm going to put in, you know, what kind of lenses I want to use at the bottom, or kind of camera angles, et cetera, et cetera. So in live action, typically to plan out a narrative film, we would be using storyboards. And one thing I always like to kind of note is that, you know, storyboards are great, and for big productions, we have amazing storyboard artists. They still exist, they're still working. People are still using hand-drawn storyboards. But for those who might be working at like an indie level or with a smaller crew, I would say that there's certain kind of filmic or cinematic elements that are really difficult to capture with a hand-drawn storyboard. So something like color and lighting might be able, pretty simple to capture in a hand-drawn storyboard, but the effect of shadows and highlights might be a little more difficult, again, especially if you're working with a smaller crew. But as we can see, shadows and highlights play a really important element to the overall feel or ethos of our shot, right? It really does make a difference. Camera composition is easy to capture in a storyboard or to write out. I want a wide shot, I want an extreme close-up, I want a Dutch tilt. That camera composition is fairly easy to visualize with pen and paper. But something like camera lens effects might be a little more difficult. Again, these are really important elements to our shot because they do fundamentally change how a shot feels or how an audience might resonate with a particular shot. So something like the camera lens effect down here, we can see that, the choice between a 200mm lens and a 20mm lens is huge, and it's going to completely change the overall feel of that shot. And these are things we should be able to not just write out, but also visualize as we're working through the pre-production process. So a lot of people are using Unreal Engine right now for prevising. So instead of doing that hand-drawn storyboard, they're actually visualizing the film from the beginning using 3D software. So Unreal Engine has a lot of amazing film tools that anyone can play with right now. We have Cine cameras, which you can see an example of down there, where you can choose your camera lens, your film back. There's actually camera bodies that are reflective of real-world cameras. So let's say you want something like an Arri Alexa, and that's what you're going to shoot with. You can have your virtual Arri Alexa inside of Unreal Engine and apply a 20mm lens or a 200mm lens, and again, just get that much closer to the final result of what you're trying to shoot. We have Sequencer down here that you can see. So this is our keyframing kind of timeline software where we're using Cine cameras, we're blocking out shots, we could even do animatics as well. So again, if you're kind of a beginner getting into this and you're interested in even doing previs, even if you're not going to ICVFX, right, and shooting on an LED wall or LED volume, but you want to start playing around with real-time visualization tools, I would say to you as filmmakers, try to do a 3D storyboard inside of Unreal. Just learn our camera tools, learn Cine camera. You can place some virtual actors in the scene and just render out still images. You don't even have to go through a full, animation pipeline or make an animatic. You can just render out still images and use that as your virtual storyboard. Again, we're seeing a lot of people using Twin Motion for previs as well. So this is Like I said before, it's more beginner-friendly software than Unreal Engine, but we're seeing a lot of interesting use cases in art departments all over the world using Twinmotion. We also have really good camera tools inside of Twinmotion as well. And then also metahumans for previs. Again, I'm going back to all the elements of the Epic Games ecosystem that's not just, solely Unreal Engine, but the creation of digital twins in a visual storyboard is a really cool and neat way that people are replacing their actors with a virtual kind of representation of that actor. So these are some storyboards from Texas A&M, School of Visualization. They're teaching a lot of really great ICVFX in their film programs. So these are their virtual storyboards that are made with Unreal Engine and MetaHuman as well. And then from an industry example, something like Dune Part 2, we did this great interview with one of the cinematographers there, and they talked about how they used both Unreal Engine and MetaHumans for pre-visualizing it. And they said a large part of what we used Unreal for was to pre-plan the shots we were trying to achieve and being able to put metahuman characters into the virtual location to pre-plan where shadows were going to reveal them, where the shadow was going to be off of them. Using Unreal in pre-production was a godsend. So that's what they're saying here. Also part of previs, sometimes we call this stunt viz. What I like to say about stunt viz is people use this term and think it's literally to plan out stunts. I don't really see it that way. It's to plan out action. So if we have a camera movement or we have the actor actually moving, we can do something more akin to stunt viz to really plan that out. So this would involve a little bit more than just using metahumans and rendering out like a still image inside of Unreal Engine. This is actually tracking motion, right? The camera moving or actors doing a scene. So what you'd want to use for this is probably something like a tracking system. In the example I'm going to show you, this is OptiTrack, motion capture suits, and a part of Unreal that's also called VCam. So this is tracking an object in space, and it's acting as the virtual camera inside of Unreal. So I'll just show you this. This is a really simple example. I don't need the audio on this, because the audio's a little weird. So this is just us playing around for like the very first time with some of these technologies, which is really, really fun to do. So we have our actors here, I'm one of them, using an object that's also tracked, and then we pan over and we see this inside of Unreal Engine, and we see the actor here, represented by Manny, who's one of the default mannequins. And again, this is all tracked and we're able to see it in the final thing. And just to go back here, we see Dan, who's our camera operator there, using the VCam. It is literally just a tracker. It's not an actual camera. So he's tracking the motion, and then when we pan over to the Unreal Engine scene, you can see his camera movements reflected on the Cine camera in the scene right there, right? That pan up. So again, this is a really cool way. It's a little more of an advanced workflow. It requires a lot more than, again, just rendering out stills or an animatic inside of Unreal. But again, this is how people are using previs or stunt viz right now in order to kind of get closer to that final motion or image that they want in the film itself. If you're interested in that kind of workflow, we have a great visualization guide here. This is available for free. I put the QR code up because I do really encourage people to check this out. This goes over like really all the essentials of visualization. So teaching you how to use something like VCam, which you saw in that shot there. This was released a few years ago, but the content is still incredibly relevant. So I would say download a free resource. Don't necessarily go and sign up on like a weird Udemy course or Coursera course. A lot of the content we give out for education, learning, and training is absolutely free, and this is one of them that's going to be super helpful for you in terms of virtual production. Now, after previs or stunt viz, we're visualizing it inside of an engine. We have something called tech viz. Sometimes this is referred to as the blend day. So before we're ready to just go shoot on a volume, let's say we have our Unreal environment that we want to use, and we're like, yeah, everything looks good, I like it, it's optimized, everything looks beautiful. We can't just go shoot right away on a volume. So we have to have this thing called blend day. And what this is really blending the virtual with the physical. So that could include props, and that definitely includes lighting too, because blending virtual or artificial lighting and real-world lighting is tough, and it's something that I think a lot of cinematographers who haven't worked in ICVFX aren't really used to. So just as a kind of note here, I would say that, I taught in a virtual production program at a college, and we made a 2-minute long film, and we did about 10 hours of tech viz before we shot that 2-minute film. Others have said before that for every shoot day that you have on an ICVFX workflow, so every day that you have filming on set, you need 3 blend days for. So that's kind of just showing you the importance of this process here to technically visualize before we're ready to shoot. The only thing I want to say here is that I'm always trying to be very honest and say that virtual production or ICVFX is not like a magic bullet. It's not going to just work out of the box. There's a lot that goes into it. So Tech Day is like one of the pieces of the puzzle that I think is, cannot be skipped. You can't just have an environment and go shoot on it. You need something like Tech Viz to blend all these elements together. Again, that comes in this pipeline around here. Previs, stunt viz, tech viz, like I said before. And then after tech viz, you would have then your principal photography, filming ICVFX on your wall or on your volume as well. So what I want to kind of remind everyone of, again, especially those who are maybe newer to this field, is that ICVFX as a set is still very much a film set. So there's a lot of consistencies between live action, film production, and ICVFX as well. So ICVFX, we still need directors, producers, art directors, cinematographers, gaffers, camera crew, lighting technicians, sound technicians. None of this is going away, right? So I've heard people talk about ICVFX like it's a replacement. Like, oh, you're going to be putting some film people out of jobs, like very much in the AI kind of like ethos conversation. It's still a film set at the end of the day. You still need all of these traditional crews, but then what we're doing is actually adding on some talent as well that's specific to the ICVFX workflow. So this would be something like a VP supervisor, virtual art department, which we usually use the acronym VAD, virtual art department, tech artists, system technical directors, stage technicians to actually operate the stage itself, engine operators to operate Unreal Engine, tracking supervisors, volume technicians, and colorists are really important as well. So these are kind of the newer roles. These are the more traditional roles, but one thing I really want to point out is that all of these kind of more traditional roles, whether it's a cinematographer, a director, or producer, they need to fundamentally understand how ICVFX works, okay? So all of this needs to be bridged in together. And so one thing along that line that I always like to say is that, VP terminology is ever evolving right now. This is a very new field. So you're not always going to find consistencies in production as it pertains to what people are calling things, whether it's a technical term or something like blend day. Some people use the term blend day, some people use a different term. So for those who come from traditional film and are moving into ICVFX, this is something to be aware of, because this is often what I've heard is actually quite a struggle or a hurdle for productions that are, again, using a traditional cinematographer and trying to get them, into an ICVFX workflow. Terminology and then also just the culture of that really needs to be merged together, and it's something that's an ongoing effort, I would say. Oh, sorry there. For roles and responsibilities for some of those newer terms I mentioned, I have like a quick overview here. So something like the virtual production supervisor is aligning the creative vision of the directors or producers with ICVFX workflows. Again, the VAD supervisor or the VAD team of technical artists are designing and constructing the virtual scene behind you. The engine operator is managing the Unreal Engine scene on set. So just so you know, these are all different roles, and these aren't all of them. So don't assume that if you're coming from traditional production and working in ICVFX, you can hire one person to do all of these things. That is something I have seen in the past. They're like, we just need one Unreal Engine artist. No, it doesn't work that way. Systems technical director is managing the physical components of the stage, right? They're not even touching Unreal. They're not even designing anything, but that is a critically important role that you need to have on set, as well as stage technicians. This is from the VES Handbook of Virtual Production. It's one of my favorite resources when it comes to kind of like an overview of virtual production and the industry and workflow and production changes as well. This is like a sample organization chart. Again, everyone's going to have a different hierarchy here, but it would be something like our virtual production producer and supervisor at the top, and here's the teams that they would lead down here. Okay, so these are how all the roles are kind of working together. Who's leading who is, let's say, managing a crew when it comes to ICVFX. So again, this is just one sample, but I like to show it because, again, some people aren't familiar with all the roles and how crews are also changing. Before I end, I also just want to address right now some kind of gaps and hurdles that are currently existing. Again, my goal isn't to make everything about ICVFX seem like it's a magic bullet, like it's the best thing that's ever happened and it's so easy. It's a new technology, it's a new workflow. There are still gaps and challenges that we have to overcome. This is a great resource. This is the Virtual Production Skills Report from 2023 from Story Future. So it is 2 years old, but again, I read through it every year and just make sure it's still relevant, and I still think it's a great resource. So in this report, something that they found is that 2/3 of VP active companies reported a weak or very weak supply of VP talent in the market. They also did this great overview of some of the roles right now that are hardest to fill in terms of ICVFX workflows. So VP supervisors, again, this is a very new role, so a lot of people aren't trained up in that exact workflow or how to manage that team. Technical artists are a little bit below that, but we are seeing an onslaught of more technical artists that are coming from industries like game design and game development who are actually making the shift over to virtual production, so that's super helpful. And then critical skill gaps, art departments who understand game engines, coding and engineering for plugins, asset building and optimization. Again, nothing works out of the box if you just download something in Unreal, like an environment, and try to put it up on the volume. These need to be properly optimized, so that's really important. So again, this is what they found in the 2023 report, kind of divided amongst creative and communicative roles and technical and logistical roles as well. The number one role that they found was hardest to fill, again, was the supervisor, followed by stage operators and stage technician. These are people who are actually working with the LED panels or the LED wall and LED volume and understand how that works. So those are the two hardest roles to fill, followed by a technical artist. A major hurdle, though, that also has to be addressed is directors and producers. You would think, coming from, areas that have a lot of film production going on, you would have a wealth of directors and producers at your disposal. But again, it's having these traditional roles understand how ICVFX works is kind of a major gap that a lot of people are identifying. Producers is one that's very near and dear to my heart, as I used to be a film producer, and just seeing how producers right now don't fully understand how to scope out a shoot or budget for a shoot. They might not understand that, again, for every shoot day you need 3 blend days or tech viz days, right? So they don't know how to actually budget for like time and studio space. So again, this is a major hurdle as well that cannot be ignored. So one way that I think we can kind of address some of these skill gaps is actually by aligning education and industry. Again, I do come from the education, learning, and training team. But there's a lot of reasons why I think it's super valuable, especially in areas that are adopting, ICVFX for the first time or trying to promote it within their film ecosystems, why they should really align with industry. So one is that, these industry need production-ready grads. A lot of people are doing training right now for people like cinematographers or art directors who have been in the industry for 20 years. But it's not enough. That training takes a lot of time. We also have to align and make sure that our students who are, studying film today also understand these workflows so that they could be really valuable to just move into a film production set, and they don't have to be retrained alongside the industry giants. So I have a quick clip here from Aaron Gordon, who's the COO of Synapse Virtual Production based in LA. They did the Eminem Houdini music video, which is great, but here's a quick clip of him talking about this.
There's an underlying truth about virtual production, which is it's not only a young space, it's a young person's space, and I think it'd be really good for a lot of students to recognize this, is that when a space has no real history in its current form past 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it means that it's also an industry where people that have been in media and entertainment or gaming or other places for decades don't necessarily have an advantage over those coming fresh into the space because of its lack of precedent. And I think it's really important for students to know, because it means you can come out with a fury and you can do a lot of incredible things in the space. Our stage ops team is pretty much a young team. You know, overall, all of our stages are going to be populated with relatively young operators. Our contractors are relatively young, whether they're a few years out of school or whether they're a decade or less out of school.
So again, the kind of value of training the young people today, studying film, studying digital media, to be able to work in this industry is hugely important. And then on the other side of that as well is that we have this kind of always critical gap where educators are not really keeping up with the industry changes as well. Like education and higher ed sometimes can be very siloed. I know this because I teach in universities, right? Where we have instructors who like did CGI 20 years ago and they're still in that kind of workflow. So it's important that, you know, in order to get industry-ready grads, the industry has to be in line and tell education what is going on, what changes are we making, what workflows are we doing, because everything is evolving really, really quickly. So again, these people have to be very much aligned, I would say, in order to contribute to the health of ICVFX in a given region. And then finally, as well, regional infrastructure is huge. When we want to build volumes in places that have no precedent in ICVFX, that is happening all over the world. I'm Canadian, and in Winnipeg, Manitoba, which a lot of you probably have never heard of, Manitoba, one of our small little provinces, they have a giant LED volume in that space right now because they do a lot of foreign production. They have really good, generous tax credits. But again, you can build a volume in a space where you're trying to attract foreign productions or local productions to come shoot, but if you don't have the infrastructure of talent to support that, everything's gonna fall apart, right? So this is where education can really come in and help that, and help the kind of growth and sustainability if a region is trying to attract, you know, production to use their wall or to use their volume. This is really, really important. We have to have the talent in the region to support it. So again, New Media Manitoba and Winnipeg, what they're doing is they're actually making this a workforce development initiative. So they got a lot of money to build the stage to attract film production, but they also got a lot of money to train local talent in these workflows. And that's why that region is healthy. I can't say that for every, you know, place that's trying to build a stage right now. And then finally, to kind of help with this gap between industry and education, I would say this is where our Unreal Engine education team really comes in. Once again, what we're trying to do in this team is really support the growth of education in the adoption of real-time technology, whether it's virtual production, game development, simulation, ArcViz, all of these different industries. I do want to say you can lean on us. This is literally why our team is developed. So if there are educators out here who are interested in this, please come talk to me after. And then finally, I do have to shout out that we have authorized programs at Epic Games. We have authorized training centers. We have authorized Unreal Engine instructors, academic partners for educational institutions, and a service partner program for studios that are providing services to clients. So we have all of these kind of Epic credential affiliated programs that you might be interested in. You can find a ton of information online, whether you're a studio or a school or just an instructor who's really, really good with Unreal Engine and they want that certification. I do encourage you look into these. So the big picture and takeaways, I would say here, again, from my perspective, communication between all these different industries and all of these different roles is important. Focus on pre-production and define a value proposition as well. ICVFX isn't for every single use case in film, but it can be really, really useful and beneficial to us. So make sure that before you pitch an idea for ICVFX, you understand the value that you're creating with it as well. This is my favorite book on the subject matter. This is the VES Handbook of Virtual Production. That's the one I encourage everyone to use. And then finally, I'll end with our virtual production field guide that we developed at Epic Games. There's 2 volumes of this, Volume 1 and Volume 2, both available completely for free with this QR code. So this is also, I'll move out of the way so you can scan that, a really great resource that's available to everyone today that you can just take home and start reading. And with that, I know I'm over time, so I'll say thank you, because I talk too much. Hi.
Thank you so much, Jamie. We only have time for one question. ¿Alguien tiene una pregunta? No, todo clarísimo. Ah, ya.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
Thank you for your, thank you for everything. It was really interesting. I want to know if this works for Windows, Microsoft, and also Mac. Either which works better?
Yes. So typically, Unreal Engine users are Windows users. However, Unreal Engine itself is now supported on Macs that have the M1 and M2 chips as well. But I wouldn't really, from my perspective, suggest people start downloading and using Unreal Engine on a Mac unless you have those chips. It is really primarily a Windows-based workflow. A lot of like the studios that we see are using Windows. If you go online to unrealengine.com, you will find a great guide that's spec and hardware requirements. So I would encourage you, I wish I could pull it up quickly, but I know we don't have time, but I can send that to you or just Google it and it'll tell you kind of the best specs to use that your computer should be running on in terms of what graphics card, all that information.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Great.
Thank you so much.
Gracias, Jamie. Importantísimo todo lo que nos compartió Jamie. Me encantó la parte